Just let me know when you want me to get started. If you want me to wait till 2:45 or
Okay. You guys got any kids over there?
we got one.
Okay. Yeah, we're broadcasted here at Pasadena and at Doherty. So I'll upload it to YouTube for anybody that missed it. But yeah, thanks again, Nathan,
Yeah,
for
no problem.
participating.
I was debating whether or not you should just play the the previous recording from last year, but it's better to do these things.
Yeah, yeah, we can make it short. 20 minutes.
Oh, this will definitely be shorter. I'm not gonna go the full hour this time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, so
Yeah, go ahead.
for everyone that's here, I'm gonna be talking about the United States Peace Corps. This is gonna be a little bit different than the other careers that you probably listen to, because it's not really a career per se. Some people use it to build a career, some people use it to build a resume, some people use it as like a stopgap before they find out what they want to do. I kind of did a little bit of both. I was gonna make a career out of it and do all these things, but then some stuff happened and I felt like I should just get home as quick as possible, and we could get into that later. So this is going to be a presentation broken up into two parts. I'm going to talk about what the Peace Corps is and what the Peace Corps does. And then the second part of this presentation will be about my experience, because everyone's experience is different, because there's different countries and stuff. So what is the Peace Corps? The Peace Corps is a service opportunity for motivated change makers to immerse themselves in a community abroad, working side by side with local leaders to tackle the most pressing challenges of our generation. So the two main takeaways from this generic definition would be immerse yourselves, and abroad. So you're basically living in a different country, right? So you're immersing yourself in a community. The Peace Corps is a 27-month commitment. What they tell you is your first 12 months there is you're building relationships with the community. You're finding out what problems the community has for that first year. And then the second year you're there, that's when you're trying to tackle those challenges, right? So the Peace Corps was started in the 1960s by John F. Kennedy. Politics aside, it was mostly, during the Cold War, we're trying to influence countries to be a democracy and stuff like that. I won't get into it, but yeah. So the goal of the Peace Corps, there's three main goals. The first goal is to help the people of interested countries meet their need for trained men and women. So each country is a little bit different. The second one is to promote a better understanding of Americans on the part of the people served. So a lot of times when you go to these countries, when they think of Americans, they think of what they see on TV, right? Like the Brad Pitts and the Jennifer Anistons and things like that, like Friends, right? They think of that. So when I went to an Asian country, there was a lot of questions like, "Are you really American?" It's like, "Yes, I was born here." Like, I've had people ask me, like, where did you learn English? Your English is so good. It's like, well, I was born in the United States. And it's kind of funny because like the people that do understand that there's different cultures and stuff in the United States, we have an LA accent, something that we don't really realize until we go and we meet other people. But like when I would meet my friends from like the South, when I meet my friends from New York, they're like, "Oh, you're from LA," like 100%, just based off the way that I talk. So you learn a lot about yourself. And number three, which is basically what I'm doing today, is to promote a better understanding of other peoples on the part of Americans. So I served in Mongolia. I'm going to be talking about that in the second half of this presentation. But when you think of Mongolia, I guarantee you think of the Genghis Khans at the food courts at the mall, which has nothing to do with Mongolia whatsoever. So that's my part, right? I'm going to educate you guys on Mongolian culture later in this presentation. So what do volunteers do? So we have, I know we're a WIOA school, and there are a lot of helping paths and nature paths, and the Peace Corps does all that stuff. So 5% of volunteers are in agriculture, 11% are in community economic development. When I was in Mongolia, I had a bunch of business people there helping other businesses. Education, 40%, which is what I did. I taught English. Environments, health. There was also health volunteers in Mongolia. They worked at the hospitals. We did a lot of cross don't know if platform is the correct term, but like whenever the health people would do a presentation, we would tag along and help them with that. And then in youth development, 6%. But in all honesty, if you're working in any of these things, you're going to be working with the youth regardless. So I would say that's 100% working with the youth. So where do volunteers serve? Like I said, it's an abroad thing. You're immersing yourself in a different culture in a different country. 19% go to Latin America, 4% to the Caribbean, North Africa, and Middle East, 2%, Africa, 47%, Central Asia, Eastern Europe, 12%, Asia, 10%, and the Pacific Islands, 6%. Just so you know, if you want to serve in Latin America, you have to speak Spanish. Originally, my goal was I wanted to be in South America. I wanted to be in Peru. I wanted to do some motorcycle drive down the coast like Che, but they told me right away, oh, if you don't speak Spanish, there's no way they're going to send you to South America. So, and then they wanted to send me to Africa. And I was like a little on the fence on that. And I told them maybe not. And then 30 minutes, they called me back and they told me we're going to send you to Asia. It's a little bit different now. When I did this a decade ago, you gave your preference of where you wanted to go. And they did the best to put you there. But basically, based off your skills, based off your resume, based off what you know, they're going to place you in the best situation for that country. So there are only 2 requirements. The Peace Corps has 2 mandatory requirements to be eligible for volunteer service. You must be a US citizen and you must be at least 18 years old. However, the process is very competitive, with many positions having minimum education, work, or volunteer experience or language requirements to qualify for consideration. So like I said, if you wanted to serve in Latin America, you would have to know Spanish. If you wanted to teach English abroad like I did, you would have to have at least a minimum a bachelor's degree. But you could always supplement those things with like work experience and other things. It just really depends on what you have to offer. So benefits, career benefits. The Peace Corps offers career support tailored for volunteers when they return home to help prepare for the next step. Help translating the field experience to prospective employers, advantages in federal employment and hiring benefits. So it's really hard to get your foot into like government jobs. But once you do, like it gets easier. So there's this thing called non-competitive eligibility where like whenever you get hired for a job, you have to go through like human resources. You have to do all these things. They have to like vet all these people. With non-competitive eligibility, if they like you and they want to hire you, they could skip all that and then you get hired right away. So you get a year of that when you come back. And I have a lot of friends that use that non-competitive eligibility. I have a friend that works in the Social Security Administration and another one that works for the Peace Corps as a recruiter. So access to job announcements, resume services, and career fairs. I actually spoke at a career fair like a year after I returned. So that was fun. And then other special eligibility for hiring preferences by organizations designated as employers of national service. TEFL certification and graduate school. The Paul D. Coverdell Fellows Program Partners offers return volunteers reduced tuition, assistantships, and stipends at more than 90 participating university and colleges. One of my best buds, Brian, he actually got a fellowship to Oxford University, where he got his master's. And right now he's working on his PhD. I think what is he studying? He interviewed a bunch of Mongolian Peace Corps volunteers. I think he's doing the like the educational system for his PhD or something like that. Networking. I do have friends in all 50 states. My original plan when I came back from Mongolia was just to like drive around the United States and just like couch surf with all my friends, but I got married, so I couldn't really do that. So there are hundreds of thousands of Americans have served as Peace Corps volunteers, making for a highly active and diverse alumni network. I am actually signed up for some Sunday brunch thing every week, and I get the I get the email every week to go to this brunch, but I never do. So this is from one of my friends, Natalie. So I asked a bunch of people how the Peace Corps affected them. And for her, the Peace Corps helped her tremendously to find her career path. She used 2 of the most powerful benefits offered by the Peace Corps was the scholarship program, where she got her master's. And then she used her non-competitive eligibility to find a job with a federal agency, right? And then I don't know what she does exactly, but whenever I see her posts like on social media, she's always like in a different country, at a beach somewhere. That's just like what she likes to do. So any questions? You could type it in the chat if you guys have any questions. Question.
Yeah. Is there like there's no you said there's the only requirements to be 18, right?
18 and a US citizen. Yes. Yes, you could be any age. You could also be married and served with your partner. When I was there, there was a couple married couples. They separate you during training. So you're for like 3 months, you're not together. But I had this older gentleman named John. Like he recently got divorced and his kids were really worried about what he was gonna do, like moving forward. And he's like, I'll be all right. And he ended up going to Mongolia for 2 years. I had a friend that was he was a war correspondent for the Vietnam War. And he was actually in the Peace Corps, I believe, in like Nicaragua, like in the early 70s. And then he went back and he did another tour service in the 2010s. It's just weird saying that, but 10 years ago. So yeah, you could be any age. There's a nice mix. It's a lot of younger kids, like straight out of college for the most part. But you do have like the random 35-year-old married couple that go and they do it. So.
And I might have missed this for the beginning portion of your
Yeah.
but how was the application process?
Oh, so the application process, it took me a year. So I applied and then I had my interview. And then after the interview and they were like, we're really interested, I had to get, like basically when I got approved, you don't know where you're going yet. They kind of give you like a blanket, like area where they're gonna put you, but then you have to do all this like background checks. You have to get like a bunch of physical done. I had to get my blood taken 3 times because the first time a bunch of false positives came back. So I had to do it again. And that was like 15 vials each time. And then, yeah, it took them like a year. And it's kind of a funny story because, so I was like 9 months in the process and there was like delays in my departure due to like some medical stuff. So at this point, it's like, you know what? I don't want to, right? So my mom was like, well, your uncle recently got diagnosed with cancer and you're not doing anything. You want to go move to Texas and take care of him. So I was like, all right. So I flew to Texas. I was there for 3 months taking care of my uncle. And then the Peace Corps finally called me while I was living in Texas. And then that's where, what I mentioned, they're like, oh, we want to send you to Africa, you know? And I was like, well, you guys told me you were going to send me to Asia. So at this point, like I didn't want to go anymore. And I was like, if it's not Asia, then I don't want to go anymore. And then he's like, all right, give me 30 minutes. So then he hung up and then he picked up the phone again. He's like, all right, we found a place for you. And then I was like, send it to this address in Texas. And then I still didn't want to go. When I found out it was Mongolia, I still didn't want to go. And then my girlfriend at the time convinced me. She's like, you've been waiting for a year. Like, you should go do it. So 2 months later, I was on a plane to San Francisco. But yeah, it did take a while. So any other questions in the chat or anything like that? Pasadena and whoever is doing.
Yeah, we got a question over here. So what piece of advice would you give to someone that's, you know, on the fence about joining the Peace Corps, kind of scared of being at home, leaving the state? What advice would you give to
So it was probably the most life-changing experience for me. But you're only gonna get like whatever you put into it, you'll get out of it, right? Like if you go in there with an open mind and you let it change you, it's gonna be like the greatest thing ever. But I've had people that have gone and they can't really recall what they did during the 2 years there because they just did not have a good time. But if you're on the fence, there's this good quote, but I can't remember at the top of my head. But you learn a lot about yourself traveling. You learn a lot about yourself living somewhere else, where you don't speak the language, where you don't know the culture. So like if you're on the fence, like I would highly recommend it, but that's biased. But I mean, if you traveled before and you enjoy that aspect of it, like I'm the type, if I go somewhere, I try to avoid all the touristy spots and I try to live like the locals. So I kind of enjoy that. So if that's something that you enjoy, then you would definitely 100% enjoy the Peace Corps.
Can you talk about, maybe share an example about maybe the hardest thing you had to overcome while you were there in Mongolia?
Yeah, I can get into that in the next part. There's a whole story that connects to that. In the next part, I'll talk about my experience.
Oh yeah, go
But
ahead.
I didn't have the best experience early on, but that was mostly due to mistakes that I made, not necessarily the country that I was in. So we can get into that in a little bit. So yeah, there's whole nother section of this presentation. This is just a nice little break before I move on. Anything else?
Get over here.
All right. All right, so Mongolia. So I served in Mongolia from June 2011 to August 2013. So when I said it took a year to do the whole application process, I did apply in 2010. So it did take a while. So M22 designates that we were the 22nd group of Peace Corps volunteers to go to Mongolia. So each country is different. Like Mongolia's been since the 90s. So when I went, 22 was the group that we were in. We were working with the 21. So the way it works is every year they send a group. So I was working with, for my first year, I was working with the M21s. And then for my second year, I was working with the M23s, right? So you always have to have a group of Americans there to help the newcomers in, so that when you leave, they're able to help like the M24s and M25s. Moving forward, this is a picture of the Mongolian steppe. That is a yurt, but we like to call that a Mongolian ger. I believe those are yaks and horses. So fun fact about Mongolia, they have like the least dense population. There's like 2 people per square kilometer for the entire country. Imagine like the entire United States South. Like you have like Louisiana, Florida, Texas, like that area. That's how big Mongolia is. But there's only about 4 million people that live there. So it's not a lot. There's actually more horses that live in Mongolia than there are people. So this is my host country, Mongolia. It is sandwiched between Russia and China. It was kind of recently in the news because because of the Ukraine Russian conflict, when Russia said they're going to start drafting people, there was a lot of Russians trying to escape to Mongolia. So there was pictures of like the border between Russia and Mongolia and a bunch of people trying to get in. The capital of Mongolia is Ulaanbaatar. It is it's kind of in the middle to the right. And if you look at that circled area, that's Erdenet. That's the city where I lived for 2 years. So it is a landlocked country. So I like to joke because they don't really have boats. They had airplanes first before boats. So the word for airplane is ongots, and the word for boat is also ongots. There's water airplane. So the word for airplane came first before the word for boat, which is just kind of funny to me. All right. So when I left the United States, first we met up in San Francisco. There was about 55 of us. And then we stayed 2 nights in San Francisco. And then they took us on a plane to Mongolia. So we arrived at the Chinggis Khan International Airport. I know you guys are used to seeing the Genghis Khan in the mall. His name is not Genghis, it is actually Chinggis. When the Persians were the first people to come into contact with Chinggis Khan, they don't have a ch in their alphabet. So the closest thing was the g. So that's just kind of what stuck. Yeah, so there's me in the middle, and that's the crew that I was flying with. We stayed in a gear camp for a couple of days before we went off to training. So there's a lot of rules inside of a gear. You're not supposed to walk in between the 2 posts, as you see in the top right. Those 2 posts, you're not supposed to go in between that. Everything in Mongolia is clockwise. So everything in America is kind of counterclockwise. It's such a weird culture shock thing. But like when you think of NASCAR, they drive counterclockwise, right? When you think of like when we do things, it's always counterclockwise. But in Mongolia, everything is clockwise. So when you enter a gare, when it's a circle. So when you enter, you have to start from the left, and if you want to go around, you have to go left to right. And then there's specific parts in the gare where like it's organized by age. So like if you have if you're eating dinner with your family, like all the elderly people will be in one side of the gear, all the younger people will be at the other side, and everyone else in the middle. But there's like a lot of rules and stuff that you're supposed to follow, but a lot of people don't follow. Even the people in that live there, like all the Mongolians and stuff. There's all these rules that they tell you, but sometimes you just have to live it. So that was where we stayed in the Gare camp. So after we spent 4 days in there, they sent us off to different villages to train. So there was 55 of us, and they put about 11 of us in a different village for 3 months. So I stayed in the village of Shamir. That was my my host family's wooden house where I stayed for 3 months. If you look on the right side of that, that's actually an outdoor kitchen. So during the summer, when it's hot out, you do all your cooking and stuff outside. And then when in the winter, when it's like -40 outside, you do all your cooking inside. So that was the room that I stayed in. Everything was provided by the Peace Corps except for like clothes and stuff. But like all your food is provided. They give you a per diem. They give you a water filter, which was mine in the back. But I just stuck to drinking bottled water. I don't know if you ever traveled, but whenever you travel somewhere, what do your parents always say? Don't drink don't drink the tap water. So they always give you a water filter. Really quick, when we go back, see that pink bucket? That's where I bathed. That's where I did my laundry. That's where I did all my stuff. It's called a tumpun. So they don't have a lot of running water in a lot of places. So you would have to like boil your water in one bucket. You would have cold water in another bucket. And then you'd use a ladle to get the right temperature, right? You put warm water, cold water, and then you'd use that to bathe. And then afterwards, you have that soapy water in that bucket. You throw your dirty clothes in there. You wash them up real good, killing two birds with one stone, right? So training consists of two aspects. You have the language aspect and the culture aspect. So for the first 3 months, we were at a school. We had two wonderful teachers that taught us the language and then taught us like the culture. So like, for example, in Mongolian culture, you're not supposed to roll up your sleeves for any reason, because when you have sleeves rolled up, it's like an aggressive thing. So people will want to fight. Right. So you wouldn't roll up your sleeves, even if it was hot, you just kind of have to deal with it with the long sleeves. Another thing they teach you in Mongolia is you don't play the I got your nose with like little kids and stuff, because this symbol in Mongolia is like the middle finger in America, right? So you wouldn't do that. Some other cultural things is if you were to step on somebody's shoe, like just on accident, you immediately have to shake that person's hand. Otherwise, they're gonna roll up their sleeves and you're gonna have issues. So it was kind of funny because when I came back to America, I would step on people's shoe, and the very first thing I would do is try to shake their hand, and they'd be like, "What are you doing, man?" So that took like a couple of months for me to break. And then this is me and my host family. So during training, they give you a paper and they tell you who's going to be in your host family. So when I got my paper, it said I had a host mom, a host dad, an older host sister, and a younger host sister. But it turns out while living there for 3 months, I also had like two host brothers that like I just woke up one day and there was just these random people in the house and I had no idea who they are. And I had to ask, and they turned out to be my brothers. So there's me. Another thing that they require for training is that you get a piece of Mongolian clothing, and that is a what's the word for this? It's not a Dell. Mooning Sams. It's a horse shirt, basically. So at the end of your training, at the end of your 3 months, you're living with this host family for 3 months. And then when you're getting ready to transition to your permanent site where you're going to work for the next 2 years. So the Peace Corps is a 27 months commitment. So you have the first 3 months, which is training, and then you have 24 months where you're at your permanent site. So at the end of your training, at the end of the 3 months, you have like this huge celebration. If you see that tall guy in the back, his host family, one of his host brothers was like a really famous dancer, like in the area. So for our celebration, he taught us a dance, and you can see in the video me dancing on the right. So that's just at the end of 3 months, you have like a celebration, and then you go off to your permanent site. So normally when you go off to your permanent site, a lot of times you either go with another American, or you're by yourself. So I was in a big city, so I was with a couple of Americans, but like my friend in the middle doing the the little chicken thing right now, he was actually by himself in the desert for his 2 years. So, and then there's me with the Peace Corps country director, and I believe the foreign ambassador to Mongolia. And then that's the people that finished training with me. All right, I think we had, so when we first started, I think we had 62 people. And then by the end of training, I think we had 55. So 7 dropped out during that 3 months. And if I haven't mentioned this before, you can leave at any time during your service. There could be reasons like personal reasons, medical reasons, whatever it is, but you can leave during you do not have to finish your full 27 months. You could leave, but you won't just get the benefits of staying for the whole term. So after my 3 months in training, I got sent to Erdenet, which is the second largest city in Mongolia. There's about 200,000 people that live there. Mongolians use the Cyrillic alphabet. So that says ERDENET. The H is an N, the P is an R, all the E's are backwards. The T is actually the same. So if you look at this video at the bottom, we started recording this in the winter, and you could kind of see gradually it go from snow to spring, because it took us like 6 months to make this video. But this was the brainchild of one of my site mates. So that's the school that I taught at. Let's see. Yeah, so Mongolia, it could get hot as 110 degrees in the summer and as cold as -40 in the winter. It actually gets so cold sometimes where it's like physically impossible for it to snow. So when it starts snowing, it's like you get excited because you know it's getting warmer. It also gets so cold that that Celsius and Fahrenheit become the same, right? So I taught at the university when I was in Mongolia. I taught at the Ish Akundvilin Nerem Technology School. Yeah, have fun reading that. But it was like a STEM university. I taught the high school kids there, and I taught the staff. I was a teacher trainer, so. And then that's just another city. You could see a lot of the Russian influence that Mongolia had when Russia took over in like the early 90s and stuff. So that is a picture of Erdenet during the winter. I've had a lot of people that play like Call of Duty, and they would tell me it looks like a Call of Duty map. So yeah, it snows, and this is me getting ready for work. I had to wear long underwear, I had to wear my work clothes, and then I had to wear my insulation layer, and then I had to wear my protective layer, right? I always say that being cold isn't that bad as long as there's no wind. Like if it's -40 and there was no wind and I had a jacket on, I'd be fine, right? But as soon as there's just a little sliver of wind, it's just the worst thing in the world. That is the Russian-Mongolian Friendship Monument. That is the second largest Buddha in Mongolia, I believe, that they were building in Erdenet. Okay, so I've talked about Mongolia. I've talked about what the Peace Corps is. Now I'm going to get into like what I actually did. So I was a university teacher trainer. I also taught high school, and that was only part of my job. The rest of my job was like building community relationships and doing things in the community. One of the things that we did is I started an English American club. A lot of Peace Corps volunteers do this, where they have like an American club at their school where they teach at. Where it's kind of like we have Halloween, we have Thanksgiving, we have Christmas. A lot of these holidays are foreign to these people. So like Halloween was something that they had no idea what it was about. So during my American club, we celebrated Halloween. As you can see, we were bobbing for some apples. We dressed them up as mummies. They don't have pumpkins in Mongolia, so I use watermelons to make jack-o'-lanterns. And that's my college America club. We also volunteered at an orphanage every Saturday. So you can see how excited this girl looks to go bobbing for apples. Yeah, so we volunteered at an orphanage on Saturdays. So like I said, other than me teaching at the university 5 days a week, on the weekends we volunteered at an orphanage. On Tuesdays we had community like language night where we would have like a topic and we would invite members from the community to come in and practice the English. Topics could be like favorite food, favorite movie, favorite hobbies. And then on Thursdays, we had a movie night where we would show like an American movie. And then we would pause it every 20 minutes and ask questions and have them answer in English. So here we taught at the orphanage, we taught the kids like American games. Like we have like Red Rover and like freeze tag and things like that. Mongolian people are very competitive, and we actually had like a collision where one of the kids lost a tooth during freeze tag. We made some funny masks. So what we also did is, so the president of the Mongolia at the time, like he really liked baseball. There's actually like a baseball field in the capital, but like a lot of Mongolians don't know what baseball is. So our first summer there, we did a baseball camp where we had like 12 kids come in and we taught them like the game. And it was really fun just watching like the very first kid ground out the short and just watching baseball unfold while we were living in Mongolia. So that's our baseball camp. I also participated in other, so like I said, there's at any given time, there's gonna be like, and when I was in Mongolia, there was like 100 people there. So there was an opportunity for me to network with other Peace Corps volunteers. So like I did my baseball camp with like 5 other Peace Corps volunteers. And then whenever I had free time, I would go and volunteer like at other people's camps and stuff. So one of my buddies did a sports camp. So we taught the kids like kickball and like dodgeball and stuff. Okay, so this is like some of my favorite stuff about Mongolia. So like my experience is Mongolia. So you'll have other Peace Corps volunteers where they went to Africa or they went to Peru or they went to like Turkmenistan or Kyrgyzstan, things like that. So this is just my personal experience. So Mongolia is very in tune with like nature and stuff. So at the top left, you see all those blue like scarves. Those are called hatiks. And that place is called Edgemod. It's a very sacred place. Like Mongolian culture is really heavy on like dairy products and meat products because they have like a lot of cows and things like that. So whenever you would do like an offering to nature, it would always be like some form of milk. So like you would you would go to Edgemod, you would tie a hatik to the tree, and then you would spray some milk over there as like an offering to like nature and stuff like that. On the top right, that is a Mongolian hair cutting ceremony. So in Mongolia, the first haircut is very, very important. It's kind of like your transition from like being a baby to a kid. So for girls, you cut their hair when they're 1 year old, and for boys, you cut their hair when they're 2 years old. So it's really cool. So basically, the kid will walk around with a pair of scissors and like a little gift bag. So you'll cut off a piece of his hair, his or her hair. You'll put it in the bag. You'll give the kid a gift. So I gave like $20. And then you say something nice about like the kid's future, like grow up to be a good student or grow up to be a good person or something like that. So perspective, I know Luis had a question or someone had a question about uh, like what it meant to me and like how my service affected like what was the question again, Luis? My bad, bro. This is where I try to tie everything together.
Yeah, like, I think the question was, what kind of advice would you give to someone who's like on the fence about it, contemplating, want to take a gap year?
Okay. So this is like the perfect gap kind of because that's the reason that I went. Like when I graduated university, I really didn't want to work right away. I really didn't know what to do with myself. So I figured I could just do something constructive with my time. And then I took 2 years off. Cause like, once you start working and once you're in your like career, that's just kind of what you're gonna do for the rest of your life, right? I mean, you could change, but for the most part, like once you start working, that's kind of it. I know it sounds depressing to all you kids in high school and stuff, but like once you're done with school and once you start working, that's just kind of it for a while. So I didn't want to get that into that right away. So I wanted to do something where it would look good on a resume, where I could feel proud that I did something constructive, right? Um, my stepdad had a very big influence on me as a person, and he did a lot for like the Filipino community in the United States. So when he passed away, I was like, how can I follow in his footsteps and give back to the community in a different way, right? I didn't want to copy him and do something here. So that's what led me to do something abroad, right? But to put it in perspective, like the people that join the Peace Corps, like imagine you have your friend group, right? And then it's just like in your friend group, you always have like the leader of the group, right? That kind of like takes control. That kind of like, when no one can decide on where to eat, like that person, is the deciding factor. So like imagine all those like team leaders, all those alpha personalities in your friend group. Like imagine all of them going and joining this group of 60 people, right? You have all these people that because it takes a certain amount of like alphaness, I don't know if that's the correct term, to like just leave and live somewhere else and think that you're going to be doing something great, right? So you have all these personalities that go abroad that just clash. And then what I learned early on is like I used to be very competitive. I used to be very like it has to be like this is my way. I want to do it this way. But then like when I got there, there was 59 other people that thought that same way. So I had to take a step back and be like, in order for this to work, like I have to change the way that I think, right? Um, so I became more of like my personality came more of like when I need to lead, I'll lead, but for the most part, I'll hang out in the back and then just observe and figure it out. So that's helped me tremendously, like as a teacher and working with a lot of people. Like I've been to a lot of different workplaces and work environments, and everywhere I've gone, like it's just been a great experience where I work. And maybe that's just because I know how to work around like other people's personalities and stuff now. But that was something that before this I had no idea. Like I was just like, I'm the leader. This is my way. Like I want to win all the time. But then when you're in a different country, you're learning a new language, you're learning a new culture, and you come up with like this plan for this project. And at the end of the day, you spend like 6 months on this project. And then like at the end of the 6 months, like nothing works. Like if you just focus on that past aspect of it, like of course you failed, right? So what the Peace Corps has taught me is to take every day and try to win the day, right? So like now when I'm at work, I have a to-do list and then I'll knock out my to-do list and I feel like I accomplished something that day. But if I just focus like on the end goal and it didn't come into fruition, then like I used to feel bad about it, but now I have a better perspective on um, what it means to be successful. And the Peace Corps taught me that a lot. So it's kind of all over the place. I apologize. So this girl on the screen. So when I went to Mongolia, right, I was like sure of who I was. Like I was like, oh, I'm like this person that's gonna go and I'm gonna change the world. And like I have so many great ideas and like they're gonna love it. when I'm there. Yeah, I'm wrapping it up right now. Right. And then when I got there, like I did a bunch of stuff and I was just like, this is not who I was. Right. Like I had this self-image of who I was. And then when I got to this different country and I was living abroad, like that self-image did like a 180. And I had like no idea who I was. Right. I started questioning everything. Like, why am I here? Like, am I a good person? Like, are my intentions good? Right. And then for 6 months, I was dancing around this whole existential crisis of like, what am I doing with my life? Why am I here? Like, am I doing this for all the right reasons? And then we were volunteering at the orphanage during Christmas and we were decorating Christmas cookies, right? We had some people send us some like cookie cutters and sprinkles and stuff. So we were decorating Christmas cookies. And then I went and we were getting all the kids rounded up to go decorate these cookies. And there was a girl in the kitchen peeling potatoes, this girl in the picture. And I was like, hey, we're decorating cookies. Do you want to go and join us? And she's like, no, I have to peel this bag of potatoes. It's my chores for today. Right. So like, I was like, you know what? Give me the knife, give me the bag of potatoes. I will peel these potatoes for you so you could go and decorate some Christmas cookies, right? Like without a thought. That was just the first thing that came to my mind. And then she went and she ran off and she started decorating. And I just sat there with like a knife and some potatoes. And I was like, I went to my friend. I was like, how do you feel potatoes? Because I live in Los Angeles. I don't know how to cook. Like when I was hungry, I would just go to like Carl's Jr. and get a Famous Star, right? I had no idea what I was doing. Like the first time I ever cooked eggs, I was 25, right? So then my friend taught me how to peel these potatoes. So I was peeling these potatoes. And then 10 minutes later, the girl came back with the first cookie that came out of the oven and she gave it to me, right? And I was just like, oh, this is like the sweetest thing in the world. And then I realized that then and there, like maybe I'm not such a bad person after all. And like maybe this is gonna be worth it. So like ever since then, like my whole mindset has been changed. Like, and I just kind of live day to day. So that's about it. Other opportunities that are similar to the Peace Corps, we have AmeriCorps, which is kind of the same thing, but you teach in America. And then you have like the JET program if you want to go to Japan and the EPIC program if you want to go to Korea. Here is my Peace Corps certificate that I got from Obama for completing my service. So any questions? I think we're kind of running out of time. I thought it was going to be short, but ended up being long.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, Nathan.
My bad. All right, later.
And yeah, not at all. Giving back to the community that gave to you. We'll appreciate your time and for gracing us with your presence. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
You too.